A cool breeze whispers from solid rock, leading you deeper into the cave until you emerge into impossible daylight. Another world where alien creatures glide between strange trees under a purple sky. But when you return with cameras to document the discovery, the cave is gone. Today, we're exploring a doorway that shouldn't exist and the terrifying possibility that our world is far more porous than we ever imagined. I'm Carol Ann. Welcome to the InBetween. This experience comes from one of our very own InBetweeners, Demetri. It's May 1991 in San Diego, California. Demetri, who just turned 18, and his roommate Jason decide to go with their girlfriends, Gail and Shannon respectively, on a camping/rock climbing weekend in the high desert near Hesperia. Demetri and Gail are true outdoors people, so they're pretty pumped. Jason just got a new camcorder for his birthday, so he's excited to try that out. Shannon is not really that outdoorsy, but is excited about the camping part as long as they don't make her rappel down cliffs with them. Friday morning, they all pile into Gail's Land Rover and are on the road by 9 a.m. and in their target area looking for a good camping spot with good climbing cliffs by noon. Most canyons and cliff faces in the area are made of sandstone, which is not really safe for climbing, especially for newbies like Demetri and Jason. After some exploration, Gail spots a non-sandstone cliff face, and they veer off the dirt road and head in that direction. The cliff, towering 250 to 300 feet, looks excellent for climbing. But now they have to find a way to the top. Takes them an hour, but they finally find a way, except that there's a 1.5 foot wide fissure in the rock in their way. So, using some 2x4s that they brought along for firewood, they construct a makeshift bridge, marking the spot with trail flags to make sure that they can find their way back. Works like a charm. At the cliff's edge, they find the perfect campsite right next to the spot where they want to do their rock climbing. They check out the stone, which turns out to be granite. Perfect! They secure the climbing ropes to the Land Rover's bush bars and chalk the tires. After lunch, Shannon sets up camp while Demetri, Gail, and Jason rappel down the cliff so they can climb back up. Around 2 p.m., with the sun high and the air warm, they're about a third of the way back up when Demetri feels a cool draft. Looking around, they discover a split in the cliff face, revealing a hollow, a cave emitting cool but foul air, and decide to take a few minutes to check it out. The cave's entrance is an A-frame split in the rock with bats clinging to the seam at the top and an uneven floor littered with boulders and bat guano sloping downward. The apex is about 12 to 15 feet high, widening to 8 to 9 feet at the base. Jason calls to Shannon, who lowers down flashlights and his camcorder. Seizing the opportunity, Jason videotapes the bats while Demetri searches for the source of the cool air. With their flashlights, they find a low opening, about 2.5 feet high, with a wet floor. Gail, the smallest at 4'4", volunteers to go first, with her climbing rope attached just in case they need to pull her back out. She crawls through and reports that the initial passage is the only narrow section, opening up after that. Thankfully, there's no more bat guano, but the rock on the bottom is loose and sharp. As Demetri follows her through, he discovers she was not kidding. The rock they have to crawl over is shale and feels like crawling across broken pottery. Jason passes the camcorder ahead and brings up the rear. Beyond the crawl space is a 15-foot drop, which they use the climbing rope to climb down. At the bottom, the air feels cooler, and they stand on larger rocks beside a trickling stream. Following the water upstream, they discover a crystal clear pool with a faint glow, like maybe the rocks are covered with bioluminescent microbes or algae. Whatever the cause, the effect is like a lit swimming pool with no visible lights. The water is so clear, it's hard to tell how deep it is, but they can see what looks like albino crawfish at the bottom. Gail tastes the water and proclaims it's safe to drink. Now, having the wisdom of years, Demetri admits they should have tested it first, but the young Demetri takes a sip of the fresh water as well. Water's really cold, but that doesn't deter Gail from stripping down to go swimming. She convinces Demetri to go in with her, but Jason is content staying on the rocks and shooting as much as he can with his camera. There are stalactites and stalagmites that hang down from the cave ceiling and pop up from below the waterline of this pond that's about the size of an Olympic swimming pool. But as Gail and Demetri swim further, they notice there's more to the lake extending on the other side of a big stalagmite. Of course, it's dark in there, and the flashlights aren't waterproof, so they can't bring them along. So they move ahead slowly, using the light of their watches. Not super useful, but enough to get by. They move past the big stalagmite and see something they don't expect to see. A sheet of water falling a couple of feet into the pool from what appears to be a carved slit in the limestone wall that is so precise that the waterfall is a perfect laminar flow. So the water looks like it's standing still and it's almost completely silent. The residual light from where Jason is barely enough for them to get a decent look at it. Gail sticks her head under it. She's under there for a while, and Demetri thinks she's holding her breath, but after nearly a minute, and she doesn't pull her head back out, he tugs on her arm a bit and pulls her back. Demetri can't see much, but he can see the excitement on her face. She's so amped up, she can't even say anything at first, but then says, "Wow, it's dark in here. I can't even see anything." She tells Demetri, "Stick your head in there." So he does, and nothing could prepare him for what he sees. He puts his head under the ribbon of falling water and is nearly blinded by the bright light of full sunshine as his head comes out through another waterfall above a pool and under a canopy of large trees. The water below them falls about 20 feet or so into a pool of water at the bottom. He looks up and sees the deepest blue sky he has ever seen. So blue, it's almost purple. The air is more humid than the cave or the desert they're in and smells fresh and clean. He looks up at the canopy of trees, trying to identify what type they are, when Gail nudges him and points down toward the pool below them. On a rock at the side of the pool is what looks like a mountain lion getting a drink. And if that's not cool enough, when it's done drinking and decides to leave, instead of turning and going into the forest, it leaps across the pool to the other side, spreading out the skin between its front and hind legs like a flying squirrel to glide effortlessly to the other side. It lands and then chirps as it moves into the forest. From somewhere further in that direction, they hear another chirp like an answering call. Gail and Demetri are stunned, but quick on their feet. Gail does her best to stretch to the side and grab a sprig of some bush that's near the waterfall, but it's too far away. Demetri says, "Let's get Jason's camcorder." They have their heads and arms through this portal, but the rest of their bodies are still on the cave side. So they pull themselves back through and into the thick darkness of the cave pool. At first, they can't see a thing, not even the glow of the water. But eventually, their eyes readjust to the darkness. They swim back around the stalagmite to find that it's dark on the rocks where Jason is. They can still see him, but he isn't using a flashlight. They just figure maybe he's trying to get some good shots of the glowing water, or maybe even the albino crawfish. They call out to him, but his response is not what they expected. "Where have you guys been? I was starting to get worried." Gail tries to tell Jason what they saw, but she's so excited, she's completely incoherent. Meanwhile, Demetri wants to know why Jason's upset about how long they were gone. They were out of sight like 10 minutes max. Jason says, "Try again. You guys were gone for almost 45 minutes. Demetri thinks the darkness must be messing with Jason's head or something, so they compare watches. Sure enough, they disagree by a little over a half an hour. But Demetri's watch agrees with Gail's, and she backs him up that they were only gone about 10 minutes. Jason informs them that the camcorder is out of battery power and that the other batteries for it are in the car. He was also concerned about the batteries in the flashlights, which is why he turned them off too. He wanted to make sure that there's enough flashlight power to get back out. Demetri and Gail decide to wait with the story of what they saw until they're back up top so they can share it with Shannon too. Gail and Demetri get dressed and they all gather everything up and climb back out of the cave. Takes him about 20 minutes to climb back to the bat area. When they get there, it's dark outside. That's odd. They weren't in the cave more than 2 hours. Jason's watch says it's almost 5 p.m. and both Gail's and Demetri's watches say it's getting close to 4:30. They should have daylight until almost 8 o'clock. Okay. That's weird. But they use their ropes to climb back up the cliff face as quick as they can. When they get to the top, Shannon is a mess. She has a fire going, but it's obvious she's been crying. Turns out, it's now 5 o'clock. It's not even a dark 8 o'clock. For Shannon, it's almost dawn. And not dawn on Saturday morning, but dawn on Sunday morning. To her, they all vanished inside that cave a day and a half ago. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to move the car because all of their ropes are tied to it, which, if something had really gone wrong, could end up being their only lifeline. So she couldn't go anywhere to get any help. Being 1991, they don't have anything like GPS or cell phones. Car phones exist, and so does GPS, but not for the masses yet. And they're miles from anything even close to a paved road. So she sat there the whole time, not getting any sleep, trying to figure out what to do to get help. Gail and Demetri tell Jason and Shannon what they saw, and Jason tries to find the other battery so he can show Shannon what he recorded. Unfortunately, the bag that has the spare battery and the battery charging station is still on the coffee table back at the apartment. They all decide to go home as soon as the sun comes up and come back next weekend. They have no problems finding the makeshift bridge over the fissure from before, getting back down to the road and back home. As soon as they get home, Jason plugs the camcorder into the TV and they all sit down, anxious to see what he managed to document of that amazing cave. The recording of the bats in the cave is pretty good, even though Jason seems to have some issue with pointing the camera in the same direction as the flashlight. The footage stops at the point where Jason turned it off to crawl through the narrow tunnel, but then the tape just shows static after that. The sort of static that used to be on scrambled cable channels where something can almost be seen, but not quite. Jason makes plans to charge all of the camera's batteries before they go back and get the mounted light set up for the camcorder. Meanwhile, Gail buys a bunch of cheap quartz watches that they plan to synchronize and then string them along the path to figure out what they can about the time anomaly. How brilliant is that? They want to get as much of their next trip documented as they possibly can. The week both flies by and crawls at an excruciatingly slow pace. By Wednesday, they can't wait anymore. They each call into their jobs, take Thursday and Friday off, and jump back into the car early Thursday morning to go back to that high desert cliff. But when they get there, they can't find the cliff. When they're finally sure they're in the right place, they get out and look around. Where the cliff face is supposed to be is just another canyon, just like all of the other sandstone canyons in the area. They start arguing back and forth about being in the wrong place. But then Demetri sees them. They're trail flags. They start walking in that direction until they see the 2x4 planks they used as a bridge. They're on the ground at the bottom of the wide canyon area. They climb down to get them and can see that they are the same ones they brought the weekend before. They even drive around to the top using the same path as before to get their trail flags and view the canyon from the top. The cave, the cliff, the campsite, all gone. They even go back a couple more times over the summer, but the cliff and the cave never return. Jason and Shannon break up. Gail joins the Peace Corps and Demetri joins the Navy. They lose contact with one another as they go their separate ways, and Demetri hasn't seen or heard from any of them since that summer. After getting a master's in mechanical engineering, A 30-year obsessive hobby in quantum field theory and many, many years of reflection on that experience, Demetri has come to a few conclusions. The slit in the limestone wall was precise enough for the water flowing from it to be laminar in nature and make a ribbon of water which fell into the pool with very little sound. Way too precise to be a naturally occurring feature. Adding to that, the time dilation effects brings him to the conclusion that it is a series of intentionally constructed portals connected like a tunnel or conduit between locations. But even after studying quantum field theory for 30 years, he still has no clue how such portals can be constructed. That said, he can't think of any other reasonable explanation for what they all experienced. And if you think about it, the existence of portals, like the one Demetri experienced, would explain a lot of the weird things happening in our world, like missing 411 cases and numerous cryptid sightings that seem to leave no traces, no proof that these things actually walk in our world. Even the reports of time slips, UFOs appearing from nowhere, and from people who say that our Earth is hollow. Well, maybe they just found a portal instead. So many of the mysteries that don't make much sense are easily solved if we apply the idea of portal technology. So the next time you find some nook or cranny that looks like uncharted territory, just remember, maybe yours are not the first feet to travel that path. Maybe the other feet before you just didn't come back. Special thanks to our in-betweener Demetri for sharing this awesome experience. I don't know about you, but the other world sounds like it just might be better than this one. Then again, dealing with our issues like a bad internet connection might just be better than having to fend off a flying mountain lion. If you'd like to continue this trippy trip into another tale of altered reality, click right here. You will not be disappointed. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.